Welcome to Housatonic Live. It is Monday, February 28th, year 2022. My name is Mark Kulak, and today we have our second interview with Dilyana Gaytandzhieva. You can find her at Dilyana.bg. The content that we are going to talk about today are actually, this is a recorded interview from yesterday, February 27th, 2022, and we are going to be reviewing her research regarding biological laboratories in the nation of Ukraine and how that may be related to the current conflict, the current engagement between Ukraine and Russia, as well as the United States Defense Threat Reduction Agency funding of research laboratories in other nearby nations, including Georgia. And we're going to also talk about how the news has been representing these topics and some of our combined disappointments with ongoing censorship worldwide. So without any further ado, let's get the recorded interview going, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome back. It's been about a year and a half since our last interview. It was very popular. Thank you for doing that one, and thank you for coming back. Being in Bulgaria, it must be busy times. How is it there at this in this era?
Thank you for inviting me again to have an interview with you, and it's been a huge honor to me. In Bulgaria, the situation is, I guess, like in the whole of Europe now. I don't want to comment on the Bulgarian government policy right now. I mean, I have my own opinion on what is going on, but I realized that people in my country, which is really strange to me, they have never ever heard of Donbas, for instance. And Donbas, Ukraine, Russia, we border on the Black Sea, which borders on Russia, Ukraine, Donbas. And people in my country, no matter that geographically we are so close to this area, they had no idea that actually there was a war in Donbas, and that this war now that we are witnessing, it actually started 8 years ago, and nobody in my country even knew where and what Donbas is. And I don't blame the people, and it is not people's fault that they don't know, simply because our media and Western media, they had never ever published even a single article, let alone reporting on the ground from Donbas. Donbas, this is the area which is populated by Russians, and it consists of the two republics that declared autonomous status, Donetsk and Lugansk. And by the way, the population of these two republics, it is very huge comparing to Bulgaria. Millions of people live there. 95% of them are Russians. The rest are Ukrainians. So when in 2014, people in these two republics declared independence, the war in this area actually started, and Ukraine started shelling the population in these areas. And I want to stress, because a lot of Bulgarians also live in this area. So I know firsthand by them, they were subjected to constant shelling. And yes, shelling day in, day out, 24/7 by the Ukrainian army. And when I say shelling, I mean rockets or mortar shells that are unpredictable where they land. So the majority of the victims in such cases were civilians, including children, women, civilians, and nobody knew that. And I'm sure that even now people still don't know, and most of the people, they just think that all of a sudden, a few days ago, Russia started this operation, but nobody knows that actually the population, which is Russian in these two republics, was subjected for 8 years to constant attacks with heavy weapons. People don't know, so I
don't know. I don't know much of this myself. The politics, the geopolitics of the area are so complicated, and I get the impression. I think a lot of Americans get the impression now who are realizing that the world is mostly good people who are, and some of them are caught in particularly volatile places. And Ukraine's one of those areas where there's a lot of interest in shipping routes, and pipeline routes, and border security and control of Russia. That it just feels as though the Ukrainian population, which I guess there's not a Ukrainian. I'm learning that there's Russian Ukrainians, there's Ukrainian Ukrainians, there's probably other subgroups that I'm completely ignorant of, that I just don't know. What should we know as people on the outside looking in, who are really discovering all this history and politics? Because we on the outside, Dilyana, are getting a very simple view, almost insultingly simple, and we don't know what questions to ask our own government as far as what positions to take. So it's an open question. So please, could you expand on that and educate us?
First of all, I started with the fact that this war started 8 years ago. And during all these 8 years, people that are, the majority of them, 95%, they were constantly attacked by the Ukrainian army. And I'm talking about ordinary people, not a professional army. These were, the majority of these people in this area, they are ordinary people without specific military skills. I'm talking about 2014 when the war in Donbass started. I know firsthand by many of the families living there, they're Bulgarians living there. I know firsthand what they went through. Basically, what now is happening in Ukraine, the same was happening over these few years, 8 years in Donbass. It is the same. So that Russia many times urged Ukraine to stop shelling Russian people in Donbass. These demands of Russia were ignored. Mm-hmm. I'm very disappointed that the mainstream media never ever informed the world about this war in Donbass. So now people, they just think that all of a sudden Putin started invasion in Ukraine because he wants to restore the Soviet Union. Even people in my country, they rushed to social media and they started explaining what will happen if Russia now invades in Bulgaria. Why to invade in Bulgaria? We don't shell Russian people. We also have Russian people living in Bulgaria. Russia is demonized, while Ukraine, or the president of Ukraine in particular, he's glorified. Even Western media compared him to Churchill. You can judge yourself if such a comparison is historically justifiable. No, but people don't know many of the facts happening there. Also, there is a lot of propaganda, a lot of fake videos, so it's hard to assess the real situation if you're not on the ground. For instance, I can give an example. I was a war correspondent and I covered the wars in Libya, in Gaza, in Syria. Where were these crocodile tears of the whole world, or Western world, Europe, the United States, about the population of Yugoslavia that was bombarded and literally obliterated. I mean, civilians in Yugoslavia after NATO started and the United States started the bombings on former Yugoslavia. Where were the crocodile tears about the Syrians, about the Libyans? I can give hundreds of examples for the last decades, also about the people of Iraq, people of Afghanistan. So we have good invasions that are perfectly justifiable, no matter that they result in millions of civilian deaths. And we have other cases when Russia is or other countries are involved, which are war crime. This is double standard. So I'm very disappointed by the simple fact that in my own country, we are so close to this area and people were kept in the dark. They had no idea what was happening there over these years, and now they still don't know, because if you watch our media, you even can't understand. I remember when the first days when Russia declared that they recognize Donetsk and Lugansk as independent states. Mm-hmm. People in Bulgaria, they said, what is Donetsk? What is Lugansk? What is this? They didn't know the main problem, that these were two areas populated with Russians, and Russia wanted to protect them, but this is not known. Anyway, I just I feel very sad, because I have been on the ground in Syria, for instance, and I know what happened in Syria. Now I see what is happening in Ukraine, and it is always the same. Truth is the first casualty of every war. This is so true. The same is happening now. People just don't have an idea what is happening.
That is extremely profound and very well said. Yeah, the truth, whatever the truth is, right now the truth is being crafted by one, it seems as though by one particular group. But in the United States, it's a very simple narrative. Russia generally is, we're encouraged to view Russia only in a negative light. I mean, there was a time when Boris Yeltsin was president and Gorbachev, that the United States, U.S. citizens were then encouraged to have a positive view. And they seemed to be very, they were viewed very favorably by the U.S. media, by U.S. presidents, and so on. And I don't know why, but then during the presidency of Putin, it's been encouraged to be negative. The thing is, Putin's not my president. So he doesn't have to do anything for me. He never has to tell me the truth. You know, our frustrations, perhaps yours as well, but again, I won't speak for you, is that the only individuals that really owe me any truth and need to give me the proper guidance is my own media and my own government. You're one of the first people I've spoken to close to the area, and again, I know. But one of the main reasons that we've connected before is because of the groundbreaking work that you did with respect to United States investment in biological research in several previous Soviet Union territories, including Georgia, Ukraine, Kazakhstan, and a couple of others. And no one else had written anything about that. And that's what led me to initially discovering your work in 2017 and 2018. And now this is something that is something that's more people are finally becoming aware of. Unfortunately, it took armed conflict for more Americans to start to discover, oh my goodness, there's curious U.S. investments in biological research. I won't say biowarfare because they'll say it's biodefense, right? In Ukraine. Well, It strikes me as rather inconvenient for Americans to have to go on an extended flight away from their family and their resources to do some lab research in Ukraine. What's the motivation of that? Not to mention, there's some risk of conflict, as there has been for a long time. If you could just, again, reintroduce that topic, what led you to discovering that there are all of these multiple biological research labs? And it's an open question. Talk as long as you like. And what role do you think they may have or not have in the current conflict?
I heard about a Pentagon biolaboratory in Georgia, probably it was 2017, from a local Georgian journalist. In the beginning, it sounded like science fiction to me, like a movie. It was so unreal. Pentagon biolaboratory in Georgia, also Bulgaria borders, as I said, we're in a very interesting location geographically. So we border on the Black Sea, which borders on Georgia, so close to us. I realized that there is a Pentagon biolaboratory, and what are they doing there? I started researching for a few months, and it turned out that the Pentagon has funded biolaboratories not only in Georgia, but in 25 countries across the world. Most of them are located around the Pentagon main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran. And I went to Georgia to see myself and to investigate what actually this biolaboratory was doing. It turned out that this biolaboratory was funded by the Pentagon. It is called the Luga Center, and the investment that the U.S. government spent on the Luga Center was $170 million. Then I started researching, and it turned out that the whole sum allocated for this big international program was $2.5 billion. So my thought was, why would the US government spend $2.5 billion on the health of foreign citizens instead of the health of its own citizens? It didn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense to me, actually.
It is huge sum of money. And I went to Georgia, and it turned out that a special Pentagon unit called U.S. Army Medical Research Unit Georgia was operating in this biolaboratory along with Georgian scientists. But according to the documents that I obtained, certain areas of this laboratory were classified zones, and they were accessible only to American citizens with security clearance. This is what was written in the documents that I obtained while researching the Luga Center. By the way, these are documents that I obtained from the U.S. Federal Contracts Registry, so this is not conspiracy theory.
No.
This is not fake news. This is what is published by the U.S. government itself on its own government website. I also want to stress an interesting fact, and I don't have an explanation to that fact as well. All these American military scientists have been accorded diplomatic immunity to research deadly viruses, bacteria, and toxins. They are not diplomats, however, they work under diplomatic cover and they have diplomatic immunity. So basically this means that they would never ever be investigated or held to account if they cause death or injuries to the local population. Also, it turned out that Georgia, also Ukraine, they have signed an agreement with the US government, and under special provisions of this agreement, all US government personnel, including these military scientists, they can be held to account if they cause death or injuries to the local population. this is special protection clause or provision in these agreements. And I was thinking, if they are in these countries to protect the local population and to care for their health, why would they need, firstly, diplomatic immunity, and secondly, such legal protection which gives them even the right to cause death and injuries without being prosecuted for such a crime? And a lot of questions arose out of these documents, and I went to Georgia, talked to the local people, and they said, I even would recommend to your viewers to watch this segment of my documentaries, what the people told me themselves, so that people could themselves make a judgment. Mm-hmm. If this is fake news, conspiracy theory, or a real danger to all of us, all these biolaboratories. So what the local people told me was that they have witnessed very scary situations, including deaths of people, but I would recommend you to broadcast now.
There's a strong smell of chemicals. This smell comes from the lubricant at night, which is then spread by the wind to the residential areas.
Этот запах, этот дым, все, что идет красно-черный с зеленой, там это ночью, перед утром особенно, вот 3 часа, 4.
Local residents from the Alexeevka neighborhood, where the laboratory is located, are not willing to talk on camera. Only a few of them are not afraid to speak up.
Реально, моя голова болит. Иногда вот когда выпускают вот это все, ветер обычно оттуда на нас идет. Вот запах тухлых яиц бывает, это что-то. Иногда вот такой, знаете, вот фиолетовый цвет выходит, иногда какой-то... Я один раз ночью, говорю, проснулся, утром уже светалось. Смотрю оттуда, я оделся, подошел, ночью дым выпускают. От кого вы прячете?
Тоже были случаи с филиппинцами. Они на квартире жили в 44-м корпусе. Лабораторию, когда еще совсем не достроили. Был несчастный случай.
Какой случай?
Сейчас умерли люди, филиппинцы, вот эти двое. Двоих куда увезли, куда еще 4 их было. Ну, кто его знает, как случилось. Что-то они там работали, видимо, отравились чем-то, каким-то газом.
Скажи, как вот эти вот отравились, эти филиппинцы, все...
So those were very compelling interviews. And Georgia is not a heavily populated country, and it is. Why would the U.S. be investing so much money there when there are health issues within the United States that the United States does not invest money in? So that was $170 million for that laboratory. But and you shared this today again, and today is February 27th, 2022. Multiple contracts that have probably been recently deleted from the United States State Department website about other investments that the United States had made, at least 10 or 11, in laboratories in Ukraine. Now, they weren't 170 million. Some were 1 million, some were 2 million. And while that's a lot of money for you or I, you can't build a full lab for $2 million with all of the special equipment. So, and we have this, and I'll share this documentation again. It's on your Twitter account, which I'll post down below. What do you believe what is the story behind the investments in these 10 or 11 labs? And they're not strictly like the Lugar Center is a real full United States DTRA funded, built completely lab. These are smaller investments, but they're still U.S. investments in biological research laboratories in Ukraine. What?
Actually, this is just a small part of the documents related to Ukraine. The whole sum that the United States has allocated for this program in Ukraine until 2020 was $80 million.
Okay.
80
Yep.
million dollars. And according to documents, documents originating from the U.S. Federal Contracts Registry, the Pentagon has contracted a private company to rebuild and equip 2 new biolaboratories in Odessa and in the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. And the end date indicated in the documents is 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the program now probably is terminated. There are no Americans officially working in Ukraine now. But what struck me was that American media flatly denied the existence of Pentagon-funded biolaboratory in Ukraine. And they even wrote an article, I'm talking about USA Today, and they wrote an article denying that the US has funded biolaboratories in Ukraine. And they quoted the US embassy and the Ukrainian government as saying that these laboratories, they are under the control of Ukraine and they are funded only by the Ukrainian government. So when I read this article of USA Today, I decided to respond to the allegations of this American media outlet that that it is not true.
It's not true.
When I opened the website of the US Embassy in Ukraine and I clicked on the documents that previously were uploaded on the website, they were not accessible. They were removed. And also it turned out that these are not the only documents that are missing. A lot of US government documents that were previously uploaded on this domain, they are missing now. This domain has been taken down, which is very strange because these are US government documents. Why aren't they accessible anymore? Very inexplicable situation, but these documents now are missing. I downloaded these documents because I even couldn't imagine that American media, instead of asking their government, what are we doing? This is our taxpayers' money. What is the US government doing? What are these biolaboratories? What I witnessed was exactly the opposite. US media rushed to the defense of the US government and they called all these facts based on US government documents fake news and conspiracy theory. It was very shocking. So
it's right here.
It is in documents that are even published by the US government itself. And they deny them now. These documents are not accessible anymore because the whole domain where US government documents were uploaded is down now. It is not working anymore. And another piece of evidence about what could potentially be done in Ukraine and in Georgia in these biolaboratories, these are documents that were leaked to me by insiders, and they prove that the US government has performed biological experiments on Allied soldiers in Ukraine and Georgia. Now, the US Defense Threat Reduction Agency, this is an agency, part of the Pentagon, has funded 2 projects in Ukraine and in Georgia on 1,000 soldiers in Georgia and 4,000 soldiers in Ukraine. In the documents about these 2 projects, it is written that all volunteer deaths will be promptly reported. I'm quoting what is written in the documents. So what does it mean? That there is a risk a little risk to the volunteers enrolled in these programs? Why would they write that all volunteer deaths will be promptly reported? Also, again, during the years while I was investigating the Lugar Center, I published documents that prove that as a result of a US program, including, again, the Georgian population, US program, which was an experiment, I'd rather not tell the pharmaceutical company because your YouTube channel will be taken down for sure. This happened to many people who reported this pharmaceutical company. I will just say that this is one of the biggest American pharmaceutical companies, very much involved in the current situation now. I would like just to explain that under one American project, one of the biggest American pharmaceutical companies provided experimental treatment against hepatitis C on Georgians, and as a result of this program, more than 200 death cases were reported, and according to the documents in this death cases reports, it was written cause of death unknown. How is that possible? You have death cases, not one, not two, more than 200, and the cause of death is unknown. All the journalists that reported on this revelation, we asked the Georgian authorities, and they just ignored our questions and said that this is something normal. They didn't address the main question, why it is written that the cause of death is unknown. And again, I understood one thing. Whenever you say the truth based on documents, and when the authorities can't answer, they just say their comment is fake news, conspiracy theory. This is what they say when you expose them.
Doing broadcasts like this is not done without knowing that there is risk involved. This is a very controversial topic, which actually, that's a great lead-in for another question that I have written down here. And I apologize to the audience. I said I would help Dilyana with some questions in advance, and I didn't. So she's having to answer these as we present them. So there's many world government type organizations involved with respect to medical research, vaccine research. Would you like your audience to know about any involvement that you've noticed with any one of the following: NATO, UN, or the World Bank / International Monetary Fund in any of these activities, or have you not seen any interest and connections to those larger world organizations?
I can talk only about facts that I have seen in documents. And for sure, what I have seen in documents is that, for instance, in the Lugar Center, there were projects, and in the documents it was written that the findings could result in the development of vaccines in the future. So this is also probably one of the activities that, again, has been performed in these biolaboratories. But we have no information. This is the biggest problem with these biolaboratories, is that there is no transparency. There are military scientists with diplomatic immunity working there. There are death cases, and the cause of death is indicated as unknown. The current pandemic also, it should be a red flag to the people. Many people would say conspiracy theory. No, it can't be possible. No one wants to harm us. Okay, even if
sorry to laugh.
Even if it is just scientific research for scientific purposes, without any hidden bad intentions, because I'm sure that many scientists, they really want with their work, they want to develop scientifically their work and to develop really good vaccines or medicines, treatments. I'm sure this is the case, but while doing so, if, for instance, they perform dual-use research of concern, if they engineer pathogens, even in order to get better vaccines, in that way they create new viruses, chimera viruses, and in case of a lab leak, what could happen? One of, and for now probably this is the most plausible explanation about the current pandemic, according to scientists, is that it is a result of a laboratory leak from the Wuhan laboratory, where the United States also had funded such gain of function research of concern on coronaviruses. But we learned about this very risky project after the pandemic started. Before that, if you check the documents or the information, everything is perfectly fine, everything is for the benefit of the people. Nobody knows that such risky research had been performed in this laboratory. This is the same with the Pentagon Biolaboratory. Here we're talking about military biological research. Part of these projects are classified information. There are certain zones inside the laboratories that are also classified zones.
Correct.
So we don't know what is happening inside these military facilities, what biological research or what projects have been implemented. We just know the results. In some cases, there are strange outbreaks in the countries where the Pentagon biolaboratories are located. Inexplicable outbreaks with death cases. So
I think I indexed one here. So I think it was 264 Ukrainians died of swine flu in the year 2016, potentially.
yes.
Of course, who knows if the diagnosis was correct, but this isn't. Ukrainian citizens are just as much of a victim of this, of these policies and this research as anyone else. And again, not only did I never hear about shelling in those other zones that you spoke of in Ukraine, but I never heard of any Ukrainians potentially getting sick, possibly from research that was not properly contained or even intentionally leaked. So we don't hear about any news unless, aside from the news that they want us to hear, I guess.
Even when such information appears, they just ignore it, saying fake news, conspiracy theory. And what is very sad to me is that this label, fake news or conspiracy theory, it comes from the American journalists themselves. I really can't understand if my government, the Bulgarian government, had such a program abroad, spending $2.5 billion. I and my colleagues would ask the Bulgarian government, what are you doing? What is happening? Why are you spending our money on foreign citizens, while in my country, for instance, we have so many problems with our health systems. But instead of asking and investigating, the American journalists, they just copy and paste the official government propaganda. And the American government propaganda calls all this biological research performed by the Pentagon for the benefit of the local population. Then why are these American military scientists been given diplomatic immunity, and also why are they exempt from legal responsibility and they can't be held to account if they cause deaths and injuries to the local population? This is written in the agreements that the US government signed with Georgia and with Ukraine.
This is a little bit, this is related content here, and perhaps you can't comment on the Bulgaria, but how well did Ukraine handle the COVID-19 pandemic? Were there a lot of illnesses? Was there a lot of people asked to get a vaccine? And do you think if any of that created instability which might have led to the current situation, or if they're unrelated?
Now, I checked the situation in Ukraine and in Georgia in terms of their place on the world map about COVID-19, and they had a lot of death cases related to COVID, both Ukraine and Georgia. At one point, Georgia was even fourth among the countries with the highest number of people per million that had died of COVID.
Wow.
So
I did not know that.
I mean, all this investment that the United States made in Georgia, also in Ukraine, because this is a lot of money for countries like Georgia and Ukraine. The standard of living there is very different from the standard of living in the West. So this is huge amount of money. Despite that, this huge investment didn't result in better results in terms of the response that Georgia and Ukraine had in the coronavirus crisis. Basically, it turned out that nothing helped. I mean, no measures, no vaccines, nothing helped our world against COVID.
It's okay. I on my channel I talk pretty openly about again real news. At least using real evidence. So it's okay to speak candidly about that. So I've found some research papers. COVID-19 at war, the Joint Forces operation in Ukraine, and these were written last year. As I read them, I'm like, it appears as though there might have been some political forces that foresaw military operations from Russia in Ukraine last year, and they were already suggesting that COVID-19 might have caused a situation that resulted in these military operations, like it might have encouraged it for some reason. Okay, so there is one of the things that is being spoken about now in the news is the possibility that there may be some nuclear warfare that happens, as if we don't have enough things to already worry about. Should there be concern about maybe not nuclear bombs, but like nuclear contamination, like a leaky like rivers or food or something else potentially being contaminated with radioactive stuff, radioactive leaks or damages from this conflict?
If there is a nuclear weapons involved in this conflict, we probably, especially here in Bulgaria, we would even not have time to realize. Again, I feel so sorry about the way media everywhere behave in this situation, because if
Me too.
The journalists were objective, didn't subject to propaganda, and just presented the facts straight as they are or were, because now it is impossible to understand what is fact and what is propaganda. Because I can give you an example. While reading Western media, I saw a video published by Daily Mail, and in the caption it was written, "This is Ukrainian father crying while saying goodbye to his child because the Russians were attacking, and the child was evacuated, and the Ukrainian father was going to the front line." The same video I saw 5 days earlier published by the mayor of Gorlovka. This is a city in Donetsk, the same area that I talked about earlier, where the Russian separatists, as Western media call them, separatists, but they are actually Russians in Donetsk, fighting for their freedom, for their independence, for their rights to not be killed on a daily basis. So this is what these people were fighting for. And this video actually showed a father from Donetsk, where the Russian population is, saying goodbye to his child that was being evacuated to Russia. So it wasn't Ukrainians fleeing Ukraine because of Russia. It was the opposite. Russians fleeing this area, Donbass, Donetsk, going to Russia to escape the attacks from Ukraine, from the Ukrainian army. It was totally the opposite. So in this situation, or other interesting facts, meteorite, Russian rockets hit a residential building. How do they know that these are Russian rockets? When this rocket, it was this type of air defense rocket that is supposed to be in the possession of Ukraine, because it is air defense rocket. So it is supposed to be an Ukrainian weapon, but they just captioned the image, Russian Ukraine hit residential building, and that's it. So now in this situation, you don't know what is true and what is propaganda. This is the sad conclusion that I came to again. The same was in Syria, the same was in Libya or in Gaza. For instance, now you can see clear evidence of the use of white phosphorus, which is banned in Ukraine. And the Defense Ministry of Russia warned that Ukraine can't use white phosphorus because it is a chemical weapon, and its use in residential areas, it is considered use of chemical weapon. However, you can't see this information anywhere. Why? I mean, why not to report that there is white phosphorus used in this conflict? But this is not of interest to journalists. And many other examples. Also the use of white phosphorus against children in Gaza. I witnessed this myself. I filmed children, their skin, literally their flesh was burned by white phosphorus that Israel fired against Gaza. And this wasn't of interest to the media at all, because the aggressor was a country that shouldn't be presented as an aggressor. So the life of the children in Gaza is not important. It doesn't matter at all. The life of these children, Russian children in Donbass, it didn't matter to the media, because Ukraine shouldn't be presented as an aggressor. Well, we are talking now about Ukraine. Do you know how many bombs are falling over children in Yemen? Nobody's talking about that, because children in Yemen, they are not important to the world, because they are Yemen is one of the poorest countries in the world. This country is not rich in anything. Well, Russia, because Russia is involved, this is the only conflict now that journalists are reporting on. But I can give you examples with so many other conflicts going on now around the world, and nobody's talking about them, and nobody will ever talk about them, because they are not of interest to Western media.
I think that might be changing. The coronavirus pandemic has created a scenario, has created a situation where the most American families were impacted personally by it right now. And although we have a long ways to go, I would like to think that now we realize that these conflicts are not separate from us. I'm as responsible as anyone is American. I'm sorry. I did not take seriously enough. You know what it was? I assumed that even if bad things were happening, that there was some reason behind it, that someone was making some decisions, that this was the lesser of two evils, if you will. And I shouldn't have thought that, I guess, because now it's come back and it's impacting the United States. I have more than half of my extended family I may never see again because of political differences right now, which have been brought right into the everyday lives of Americans. It's very, very significant. Many people are having odd health problems right now that they're not allowed to talk about. This is, I don't know. I didn't prepare enough statements on this, but
because at one point you just lose words. Literally, I'm shocked myself as well. Many of my friends and former colleagues, very sad to realize that they just copy and paste official announcements. This is what they do. They don't investigate anymore the real problems in my country or in the world, also related to COVID. This is another problem that in my country it was like a taboo. Journalists were not supposed to write against vaccines or to challenge the official government narrative. It is still like this, but because of the conflict in Ukraine now, COVID disappeared. Nobody talks about COVID anymore. No statistics, no deaths anymore, no masks. Have you noticed that? The pandemic is over now. Nobody reports on COVID anymore. This is what I have noticed.
That's true.
So what is the conclusion? That the narrative media has, it is only based on not the facts as they are, but on other hidden motives, be it pharmaceutical companies and their vaccines, be it government policy on depriving people of the right to choose for themselves, because there are certain professions that are obliged to vaccinate. This is mandatory. You are obliged to vaccinate to go to work or to travel. So this is a violation of people's rights, because if this vaccine, one of them, there are many, if it was well researched, if there weren't side effects as bad as we see, then they could make people get a vaccine. But how can you enforce an experimental biological experiment in this case? Because this is biological experiment. This is not. It is called a vaccine, but you don't know the side effects yet, because it is too early to know.
And most people want to be healthy. Most people don't want to die. So you can usually you can assume that most people will make a decision. If there was a medicine which would help people be safer and be healthier, most people will seek it out. You shouldn't have to demand people do something if they know it's going to help them. You shouldn't have to. That is that's very strange that we have that going on right now.
I just realized it is so easy to manipulate people by one simple way. Make them believe that there is a huge threat about their life, their families. For instance, the pandemic. Make people believe that they're going to die tomorrow, that the pandemic will never, ever, ever finish if they don't get vaccinated. Make them believe that Russia is going to invade the whole of Europe. Make them believe that. It's so easy to get people believe in whatever they are said, because when you have people that fear, you can control them. And
it's true.
I don't remember who said that. I think one of the US presidents back in the history, that when you risk your freedom for security or for safety, you lose both of them.
You lose both. Absolutely.
I think it was Roosevelt? No, not sure, but it was an American president. You have had clever presidents in the past.
We've had some good presidents. We've had some weak presidents. It's funny, you mentioned Churchill before, and I've always felt good things about Churchill as a leader. But over the last few years, I have decided to investigate everything I've learned in the history books. Everything I'm revisiting and challenging my beliefs, and it would appear that the president of the United States in World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, did not want to get involved in the war. And he had a fight. He was in disagreement with Churchill about that, the United States being involved. And well, I guess Churchill got lucky because Pearl Harbor was bombed, and then Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, had to get involved in the war. He had no choice because of the pressure from the media and from other people in the government after that.
No, Churchill was compared to Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, by Western media. This was a comparison between Churchill and Zelensky that was made by Western media. This was strange to me. On what grounds do they compare Zelensky and Churchill?
It's funny, they didn't compare him to FDR though. That's very, very intriguing.
No, because what I see now Zelensky must be glorified. He must be compared to historical persons that the world respects. And Putin has been demonized, and this is what is going on. Well, just think of this. If the United States president was in the same situation as Putin is now, if Russia, for instance, placed its weapons on the border of the United States in Mexico, what would the United States do? Would the United States accept a military union between Mexico and Russia with Russian weapons stationed on Mexico-US border? Would this be possible to happen? Of course not. The United States will never ever allow such thing to happen. We have the same situation now. Actually, we have Ukraine, which borders on Russia, where the United States has stationed, or until recently, until probably a few weeks ago, its military personnel and weapons and bases, although they don't call them bases, they call them mission training, just for because according to the Ukrainian constitution, foreign military bases are not allowed on their territory. So they call the American presence in Ukraine missions, American missions for training. We have the same situation, the same hypothetical situation as Mexico in Ukraine, but it is real, it is not hypothetical. And Ukraine, which borders on Russia, a few days ago there, President Zelensky, that media compared to Churchill, he publicly announced that he is going to pursue the opportunity of Ukraine developing nuclear weapons. What would be as if somebody else, even Zelensky, expected anything else from their neighbor. You are threatening your neighbor with nuclear weapons, and you expect just what to happen? I mean, what to happen? You are firing on a daily basis over the course of 8 years the Russian population to the east, and you expect to get away with that and to continue shelling and killing Russian children and women, and you expect what? Of course, your neighbor will respond. I have no idea. I really think this was done intentionally. The US and the West, they funded and urged Ukraine to oppose Russia, to keep on shelling Russian population, to perform ethnic cleansing, because this is what was going on in Ukraine over this time. Not only in Donbass, but there is a lot of Russians living inside Ukraine as well, so ethnic cleansing. And in the end, what happened? A conflict, of course it would happen. So I really believe this was absolutely intentionally done, because now, and I'm sure the Biden is, he went to Delaware to have a rest over the weekend. While
his home state, yes.
Okay, I mean, while this huge conflict was going on and media were reporting on Ukraine 24/7, and the American presidents went to rest for the holiday for 2 days. So I'm sure he is very happy now watching how Russia and Ukraine, the two neighbors, are in such a conflict now, because the United States got what they wanted. North Stream has been terminated. This gas project has been terminated. Russia has been subjected to severe sanctions. Putin has been demonized. All the world hates Russia. So they got what they wanted to achieve. Now it is so easy for them to get rid of Russia. It is not their, this is what they think, it is not their problem anymore, but I'm sure that Russia or Putin would have calculated all pros and cons in such a situation, and they have been probably very well prepared for the current crisis, probably for years ahead. I don't think that they would commit such literally suicide if they don't have another plan, future plan, and they could get out of the situation probably in the best possible way. So this calculation of the West, we are going to get rid of Russia. They're not right. This is my analysis of the situation.
If I may, you have a great video, which again I'll link to in our show. You were at a public hearing and you publicly questioned some people from the United States government about their the construction of these biodefense laboratories, these research laboratories in Ukraine and Georgia. And the person that you asked the questions to, at least I saw in the video, was a Robert Kadlec, K-E-D-L-E-C.
Bulgarian reporter Dilyana Gaytandzhieva asked the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Health, Robert Kadlec, for a comment during a conference on biological weapons at the European Parliament in Brussels, and was immediately expelled from the conference.
Pentagon been operating military biolaboratories in 25 countries, bordering on the U.S. Main rivals, Russia, China, and Iran? And why has the number of deadly outbreaks in all those countries increased dramatically since the start of the military program of the United States in these countries?
I will just say unequivocally and undeniably, the U.S. does not have a military biological weapons program. Period. End of statement. Number two, we have been working, and I do know for the Department of Defense, they've been working with partners in parts of the world to ensure that those laboratories, and we train them on how to do diagnostic tests on these diseases to ensure that they can manage them and also safely secure those pathogens so they're not accessible by terrorists or by criminals who would do ill with them.
While all these projects classified information, all these biolaboratories of the Pentagon in 25 countries across the world, why are they classified information?
They're not classified, they're openly available to anyone who wants to look at them.
No, I tried.
Okay.
No, this is not true. They're classified information.
No, you had
Why?
your chance. It's not an investigation here, I'm very sorry.
Why are you talking about
But of course, but I will not let you,
threats? Why can't
I
we
will
talk
not
about,
give you the word
real-
like this. We
real
try
threats?
to answer your questions, but that's not the place. Case closed. Thank you very much.
Just one more question.
We can take questions right now.
What is the need of military biolaboratories of the United States in 25 countries across the world?
Can't answer that question. That's not his capacity.
This is public area. I can use the elevator. I can use the elevator.
Sorry, not this one. This one's full.
No, it is not full.
Did it look like he was in control of that, or was he looking to other people sitting next to him for guidance on how to answer the question? I'm just wondering if because although he had a big role in the Pentagon, he doesn't directly look over the Defense Threat Reduction Agency, the DTRA. So I was wondering, I was surprised that he was there. But the more I researched, the more I learned about these people.
Yeah.
So did you notice anyone else interesting there that he was looking to for guidance or no?
This event was a conference on biological weapons, and it was hosted by the European Parliament in Brussels. Because I was preparing this documentary on the Lugar Center in Georgia, I went to at least try to get a comment by a U.S. government official. And Robert Kadlec at that point was U.S. Assistant Secretary of Health. And before that, he had experience in the Pentagon. And he was in charge of the U.S. program on preparedness against bio threats. So I addressed my questions to him. I asked him what was the need of Pentagon biolaboratories in 25 countries across the world. He literally ignored my questions.
He said you were ridiculous. He said that's absolutely not true.
Yeah.
The U.S. does not do bio. And this is where you have to be very careful of the English language. They will say, we don't do bio warfare. We do, but the real answer is that we do bio defense. We're not making weapons. We're learning how to protect ourselves. And of course, to protect ourselves, we need to make the weapons so that we know how to protect ourselves, but they still call it bio defense. So, yeah.
This for defense could be easily used for offensive activities. This is dual use of research. So this is a loophole in the Bioweapons Convention. It allows countries to produce biological weapons for defensive purposes. And when a current country is allowed, or a government is allowed to have such a program, which involves the production of bioweapons in order to, for the military scientists to study these biological weapons, because potentially they could be used by other states or terrorists to attack the United States. What is the guarantee that these same biological weapons officially produced for defense will not be used for offensive activities. What is the guarantee? I really don't understand how is it possible that one state could be allowed to produce bioweapons in order to study them. This is really ridiculous. I was told that my questions about Pentagon biolaboratories are ridiculous, but what is really ridiculous is that actually the convention doesn't ban countries from producing biological weapons. Actually, what the convention bans all these governments or all these member states that are party to the convention is to use them. But basically, they can research them for defensive purposes.
Yes.
That's the wording is different, but as you mentioned, in English, it probably sounds in that way, but for me, as a non-English person, this is not my mother tongue, it doesn't make sense. For me, it is ridiculous. I'm not used to this word, defense. Anything is under the cover of defense.
It's deceptive, yes. Can you tell the audience how to support your work and how to find your work? The best ways, please.
I have been having a DDoS attack since October 2020. After my last article about the Lugar Center and another article about private American contractors coming to my country, Bulgaria. And this DDoS attack has never ended. So now I am mainly publishing my articles on my blog, Dilyana.bg. This is where I publish my work. I don't work for governments or corporation. I really work for the people, and I rely on their support to continue my investigations.
Well, thank you very much for the work that you've done. It's enlightened many people. You have a lot of fans within the United States who are very appreciative of the work that you've done. And hopefully we will continue to work together. And you know what? Maybe someday we won't even have to talk about this terrible stuff. But until then, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Listening.